Welcome to this new Flight Simulator update movie. In this movie we're gonna look at the release notes of the latest beta version or build of the sim update number 12, which has been released yesterday. So what has changed? Well, I would say hold your horses, because this is simply crazy what kind of fixes they have included. It looks like that they added a ton of fixes, right? If you look at the list here, again, ton of fixes for aircrafts, but also they now mention specifically the world updates which have been updated, right? So let's go to the full list. So it will be a pretty long video if we go to all of them. So likely I will skip some of the, I would say, less important updates, but let's start. So first of all, the general fixes. Of course, there's the several crashes have been fixed across the title. That's what all people report, right? Sometimes Flight Simulator crashes. What's causing it? Well, it looks like that they found something which has now been fixed. Will it fix all the issues? That's always, I would say, a question, but it's good that they are working on that. Other than that, they fixed the various localization improvements, and they fixed the crash when installing many packages from the marketplace. And installing many packages, well, that happens, right? If you need to install it from scratch or the first time, then you likely need to install a lot of packages from the marketplace. Then there's a menu where they have added an option for the weight and balance visualization for the rotorcraft. So I do think that's for the helicopters, so they probably changed the view a bit. So that's really cool. Then going with the glass cockpits. The glass cockpits are in this case only the Garmin G3000 and 5000. So they added oral alerts for the TIS, TAS and TCAS traffic and resolution advisories, so that's really cool. That was already part of, I would say, for example, fly-by-wire, right? They also had alerts, and then they said, hey, you need to do this or that to avoid that you're making a collision with another aircraft. Also, they added support for choosing an oral alert voice type, male or female. Cool to see. And they enabled the direct to buttons in the GTC waypoint information and the nearest page, right? So the direct to go buttons are sometimes very useful if you want to, say, directly go to a specific waypoint. Then you can now do that also from the GTC waypoint information and the nearest pages. Then some more oral alerts that trigger at the same time will now be played back in a queue instead of overlapping each other. I haven't heard it, but it looks like there was an issue where they played multiple alerts and that those alerts were, I would say, on top, right? On top on each other. So you could hear multiple sounds, I would say, being mixed up. Then there's the new CAS warning and caution messages are now accompanied by an oral chime. And the active nav source is now reset to the FMS when the system is power cycled. That previously didn't happen always, right? Where you sometimes hit some issues, especially when you're using the autopilot and using the FMS as source. In some cases, it wasn't reset correctly, which resulted in that the navigation option of the aircraft didn't work, or at least you thought it didn't work until you switched that button to the FMS. Then there's a fix for a bug where the VSR navigation data bar field always displays dashes. I haven't seen that one. And selecting a waypoint in the GTC Direct to page, either via the keyboard or the nearest tab that matches the current Direct to target will now load the appropriate existing Direct to information. I think this one is probably related to that other one. And the last one, selecting a waypoint in the GTC Direct page. Looks like this is a duplicate or not. No, it's a little bit different. So selecting waypoint in the GTC Direct to page that is in a primary flight plan will now cause an on-route Direct to be created when the activate button is pressed. So if you press the option, if you add a waypoint in your active flight plan, then it will be added as an on-route Direct to waypoint when pressing the activate button. Then the VFR map, there is now added support for VR in-game panel zoom axis. So if you're using VFR or VR, then you can now use the VFR map with the zoom axis. Then the aircrafts, and this is really a long list, right? So first of all, the Airbus A310. First of all, they made a lot of sound improvements, as well as they resolved a lot of let's say issues with systems inside the aircraft, including pressure system bug, external lights adjusted for a more realistic experience. They improved the improvements to TD logic, top and descent. And they also changed the resolution on the base version, right? So the flight deck resolution, that's how I would say realistic or how sharp those items are looking like, that they made a change to that one. Then the FMS system, which has been tweaked to be more realistic, and it's also the 4-to-4 transition in capture bucket resolved, as well as the landing weight calculations on the FMC for Imperial fixed. And the last one is also, or next one, is the sliders added in the EFB, right? So in the electronic flight bag, you couldn't sometimes scroll. That's now being added, so it works better. Continuing with the list, the VOR1 RMI disappears when overlapping with the VOR2 needle bug. And there's the speed limiter mode premature bugs fixed. So there was an issue with the speed limiter, which they now fixed. The gallery latches repositioned to close position, and the console unit float light movable. So the console unit float light, right, is you can now move it instead of, let's say, having a fixed position. There was a gloss added on the outstanding cockpit gouges, as well as the added magnetic variations to the nav aids. Useful. And the auto brake commands added for hardware. And I do think that this one is, I would say, adding the option that you can control them with external hardware, for example joysticks, or if you're using a Stream Deck, you can now control them. Then there's the INET-B and the LW bugs fixed, as well as the RISC or RSKI waypoints to vert rev bug fixed. And there's also a loading co-route character removal bug fixed. So it looks like they also made a lot of changes to the flight plan, because the next one is also going into the flight plan, right? So installing stuff into the flight plan that received massive fixes. Continuing with the list. So there's the when you select the INAG in options, the perf calc bug was fixed, as well as the negative temperatures in the EFB now instant correctly, right? So if you use the EFB for planning, there are sometimes you need to would say add a negative temperature, and that was not possible in the electronic flight bag, so that's cool that they now fixed it. The V-Pilot COM2 bug fixed, as well as the sticker on the door bug fixed. Well, this I would say this is not the most important fix, but it's a nice one. The cargo doors now use the brake accumulator, as well as the chrono bug fixed. The secondary plan crashes fixed. Center of gravity prompt in the fuel prediction adjusted to 0 fuel weight center of gravity, right? This is the official notation, and you sometimes see that there's a mix being used with CG and 0 fuel weight center of gravity. That's now being fixed. This is a really long list, guys. Angles. So some lights were fixed. The 8C was fixed. The VHF 2 and 3 are now audible in the cockpit, as well as they trigger the secondary approach more than once crashed fixed. The volume knobs are now, or knob pull to mute works now. And also the player's voice now can be heard when talking to the ATC. Well, wasn't that the case? Well, might have missed that one. The fuel page line has been fixed, so now is amber when it should be green. And the EFB, the electronic flight bag checklist upon scrolling bug fix, right? So there's now, they added the scroll bars, but it also looks like that they made a fix where in specific scenarios where there was an issue with the electronic flight bag, and then when you're watching the checklist. The brake accumulator logic is improved. The LBS went over 100,000 clipping fixed. View has been fixed. The auto throttling to GA key binding bug is fixed, as well as the INET-B selecting values bugs fixed. The fuel burn is now, continuing during pause, because it was really weird, right? If you were flying, then the aircraft will still consume fuel, and then when you were continuing, then you had less fuel. Especially if you are doing long flights, right? And you put your machine to a pause, or you fly to a pause, and then came back. That resulted in weird scenarios. From hardware perspective, they made some improvements for the Honeycomb, Bravo, and the SciTech panels. That's cool. And they added they improved the logic for the fire test conditions, right? Those APU fire tests, which you need to perform as part of the, I would say, startup process, which is part of the checklist. There's now a better logic for that. The aileron position bug fixed in the 15/0 state. That's where it resulted in that the ailerons were not correctly aligned in some scenarios, as well as the VOR nav aid identifier started not working. So again, sound issue. Continuing. They're unable to query the sim waypoint database from ref page fixed. That was indeed weird, because if you would look at the waypoint database, it never worked correctly, but they made a fix for that, so you can now use it correctly to find the waypoint. HSI changes on the selector on the flight deck. The wiper no longer moves with no power. They fixed the loudspeaker not making sound. Well, that's why loudspeaker is useful, right? And they fixed the issue where the aircraft system freezes mid-flight. I haven't seen that, but luckily they fixed it. So if you encountered this issue where the flight systems were stuck, then you're now good to go to test it again. The temperatures not appearing in a weather page of the flight plan is now fixed, and also the current altimeter reference value is now fixed, right, where the altimeter reference was not correctly set. That's now being addressed, as well as the fire loop lights on switch to AC ESS instead of AC aimer bus, and that's, I would say, is more like the, for people who are really knowing this aircraft, that's really the things which you might see. I would say, from my perspective, right, I'm not an, I would say, official pilot, so I would say I wouldn't have seen it. Then the ADF needles now point to true bearing, not magnetic, and they fix the normal behavior when choosing non-star approach and transition, as well as the WASM AP nav data waypoint structure adjusted. And the last thing is updated translation files. So you can see this is, I would say, a huge list, right? Only for the 310, it's a huge list. I've never seen so many fixes in one specific aircraft in a sim update. But we're not there yet, because the Bell 407 also received multiple updates. So right, they removed some of the options like the auto trim and the force trim. They made some engine performance enhancements, and now it's easier to overstress the rotor RPM and torque under heavy load, more realistic. So they made the helicopter a little bit more realistic by introducing some new functionalities, but they also made it easy to stabilize now in cruise flight with trim and assistance turned off, right? Because that sometimes was a hell, or I would say not a hell, but I would say really hard to get it in, I would say, stabilized positions. That's now fixed. As well as the low rotor warning sound now sounds when the battery is switched on. Good. What did they fix more? Rotor animation in multiplayer. The rotor brake is back. It was gone with a previous build. And they also added they used the fuel type in a weight and balance settings in the jet view, as well as adding 2 new languages, right? Turkish and Korean. Those were introduced as part of the initial version of this sim update, or the beta version. And it's now also included in the aircraft, as well as the pedal animation on the connecting rod is fixed. Interior collider adjustments, VR support adjustments, full VR support now. So if you're flying VR, then you can now fully, I would say, use this aircraft, as well as the reference cruise speed now shows the correct value in the aircraft selection page. Citation longitude, several fixes based on the GV5000, which has been fixed now, right? So that's cool. Also the added brake fill and gens off oral alerts, as well as the fixed broken rotation animation on the course knobs, and the AFCS control panel up and down wheel now changes pitch reference when the AP is in pit mode. Oh, that's cool. Last thing, the 500 feet touchdown callout will now sound as appropriate. Also added other touchdown callout from 40 to 50. So that's really useful, because that's sometimes a chance, right? When you're landing an aircraft, you don't know how high you are from the ground, and that looks like they may have fixed for that. At least to sound some alerts to avoid that you're banging the floor. But yeah, again, right, this is, I would say, is more for, I would say, it helps you, but you should also be able to do it without. The Curtiss GN4 Jenny, they fixed the VR elevator not moving, as well as the engine audio from nearby Jenny aircraft can be heard within the cockpit. Well, that's cool. I didn't have that one. I would have loved to hear that one. They added the phone EFB with compass, indicator, airspeed, radio, and XPDR transponder functionality tied to the core sim, as well as the electrical system for the electronic flight pack. Added the electronic flight pack section to the flight manual, and they added the right bracket in cockpit side to hide the electronic flight pack. So the Curtiss GN4 has the EFB, and the EFB section is now being added also to the flight manual. So you can now you also use the EFB in the Curtiss GN4. The DR TBM 930. Several oral sounds have been updated, as well as the G3000 has been updated. because the G2000 was already updated. And they fixed the broken rotate animations on the curse knob, and the 500 feet touchdown callout will now sound as appropriate. Looks like there's a correlation between those bugs, right? And then another aircraft, the Douglas DC-3. It received also massive updates. So first of all, there are a lot of, I would say, cockpit models which have been updated. There's also some lights which have been adjusted, as well as the carb air temperature correctly matches the sim. The beacon lights have been fixed, the quick views have been fixed, the tooltips, which were not always displayed correctly, have been fixed. The cool to dark using the use failing to show fuel pressure is fixed. The checklist for the starting engine now says that you need to wait 2 seconds. Really important. What other fixes are there? The aux fuel gouges needles are fixed. Incorrect string on the aux fuel. The hole in the cargo doors from the inside cargo bay door is now fixed. Various light fixes, temperature improvements. So a lot of fixes for the DC-3, right? So DC-3, I've recorded some videos about it last weekend. So have a look at my channel to have a look at those videos. The Garmin G310 Goose. A lot of fixes, but also some stuff has been added. They added the phone EFB, and they added switches to the show height EFB, and of course also to the manual. And they added the translation file. So this is the second aircraft which receives an EFB. So that's cool. If we look at the fixes, there were some duplicate keys, the cockpit camera clipping to floor, as well as typo in the loading screen trivia. They fixed the engine audio from a nearby Goose. Hey, didn't we see that issue earlier with another aircraft? Yes, we did. It's also being fixed. We're almost there for the aircrafts. The H4 Hercules, the Spruce Goose, flying very far past VNE, now triggers a crash. Modern avionics being added, including an autopilot. So you can now use an autopilot in the H4 Hercules. Well, that's nice, right? Clipboard items missing, check once fixed, and also several of the temperatures were adjusted. The blurred propellers no longer cast shadows. Yoke interaction with VR controllers simulate a yoke instead of a flight stick. So if you were flying with the VR controllers, that's now being fixed, as well as warning lights for oil pressure and fuel pressure. Cool. Ryan, NIP, the Spirit of St. Louis, again, a VR controller fix, and a multiplayer art issue is fixed. Continuing with the last one, again, VR users can now launch the aircraft properly, and there's a cockpit collision being added. Continuing with the world updates, and this is the first time that they will really tell you which updates they have added as part of this fix for the individual world parts. So first of all, they fixed the Statue of Liberty, so it's now, I would say, standing on the land again, not on the water. World Update 1, right, which was the first world update, and they fixed one of the points. They fixed the Rainbow Bridge with night texture, as well as the Nagasaki airport. They fixed the control tower, LOD transition, and they added collisions for a few missing objects. The Hachiyojima airport, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly. They fixed the windsock, multiple objects, LOD transition, as well as added collisions for a few missing objects. Then the US, well, they fixed a lot, right? You can see that they fixed a lot of the points where they were not correctly shown, as well as the textures not correct, markers missing, collisions. You could simply fly to certain things which are fixed. So a lot of fixes both for, I would say, bridges, but also, I would say, other point of interest. I will not go to the full list because it's, I would say, a long one. 2 airports received an update, the Atlanta airport as well as the Friday Harbor airport. Terraforming issues, as well as for Atlanta, they fixed the clipping textures on the Delta hangar and Atlanta fire rescue buildings. Collision to the buildings, they fixed the bridge on the taxiway, and they fixed the night lighting disappears on the short distances, as well as the first one. They fixed the ground surface clipping at parking ramp 302, cargo, parking spot and ramp 312, and airliners gate H4. World update number 3, UK and Ireland, right? Wow, a long time ago already. Well, they fixed several things, including correct flags, right, for Edinburgh Castle, the LOD popping. It looks like they fixed a lot of LOD popping. Because you can see if you look quickly to the list, a lot of LOD popping here. Also some pieces where the data was not shown correctly. That's being fixed, as well as some textures which are updated. So that's for the UK and Ireland. So a lot of things, right? 2 airports received updates. Liverpool John Lennon Airport removed the light pole in the middle of the taxiway and added missing collisions to multiple buildings. And the Barra Airport, they fixed a few taxi path issues. World update number 4. Only issues are fixed in France, right? They fixed the Mont Aiguille collision. It's now possible to land at its top. Cool. Challenge you. Land at the top of this mountain and then send me a picture. They fixed the state Jean Boujon collision and the state Velodrama LOD transition. The Nice Code Airport fixed runways. They fixed the waypoints and nav procedures. Issues occurred and they added a collision to multiple buildings. This was indeed something which I experienced that one trying it out. World update number 5. Nordics. Spawning, collision, clipping, textures, popping. A lot of fixes, right? So you can see that they're really taking the feedback serious. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer before they do something with it, but a lot of cool things have been adjusted. Stockholm Arlanda also received an update, although I would say Stockholm Arlanda, maybe you should buy a third-party one, because that's definitely better than the default one. But in this case, they improved the LOD transition of several buildings, as well as the added collisions to all the buildings. The terraforming issues include a crack on runway 26, and they fixed a big crack on runway 26. Svalbard Airport, they added a missing collision to the airport hangar. Australia. They fixed several things, including the vegetation clipping, occasional displacement of dynamic flags on the Sydney Harbour Bridge, flashing geometry on the Tasman Bridge, adjusted photogrammetry exclusions at 568 Collins Street, Melbourne, and minor enhancements at several other locations. That's probably to keep the list a little bit shorter. The Shell Harbour Airport, they minimized visible LOD changes of hangars and other buildings. Iberia, again, a lot of fixes. Fixes were added, collisions for these buildings, a lot, and they fixed the LOD popping, also for tons of buildings. And then they have added, texture wraps, which they fixed, traffic issues, which they fixed, satellite imagery, which has been updated, name spelling, which was incorrect. Z fighting, not sure what Z fighting is. If you know what Z fighting is, then leave a comment below this video. And they fixed one airport, the Pico Airport, the fixed double windsocks. Then world update number 9, which took place in Italy and Malta. Again, collision, clipping errors, missing textures. What else? Well, that's it, right? But a long list, as you can see. And they fixed one airport, the Di Capo Airport, also the double windsocks. World update number 10. Again, the US fixed terraforming, mark positions, display names, textures, collisions, and the LOD transition for a lot of point of interest. They fixed 2 airports, the Lake Tahoe Airport and the Block Island Airport, where they added the collisions to both of them. So cool stuff. Dallas Fort Worth Airport, they fixed a few terraforming issues and the runway types are now defined. Others, they fixed the water cracks present at Seven Seas Lagoon near. World update number 11. Well, same fixes, right? Same fixes for all the other world updates. You can see vegetation clipping, you see Z fighting, LOD popping, holes, tin data displays next to Fisgard Lighthouse, missing buildings. So cool that they have added this. 40th anniversary update, also known as SIM update number 11. The Meigs Airfield Hong Kong, Princess Juliana, the First Flight Airport, as well as several heliports. They fixed multiple things. First of all, the Z fighting, they fixed the taxi, the starting in KGGX helipad, while helicopter select is now available. ATIS is now available for these 2 airports. For Princess Juliana, they added the collisions, they fixed the lot transitions, they fixed the Z fighting on the pathway for the First Flight Airport. And for the heliports, they updated multiple heliports across multiple cities. including the fixed DZ fighting, markers return centralized, LOD transitions are now being added, but also collisions. Last one, the Itakuru glider port fixed grounds on the runway textures. Game of the Year edition, develop ports, Laguna Airport, and the Top Maverick, what is it, version? No, edition. A lot of fixes, including collisions in Germany, Valerie Quarry, the fix of French Gulf Marinas, LOD transitions. For Laguna Airport, they fixed the floating lights, the Z flighting, and the collisions, as well as for the other airports here. Ici Le Moulio heliport, Voloports now available as helipad, and La Défense Voloports now available at helipad. So it looks like that they add some more helipads, so it's really cool. And they fixed LOD transitions for all Volo airports, as well as the Le Bourget Voloport name spelling was incorrect. Last one, or last two, they fixed a crash when inspecting the data definition with a no unit or wrong unit entry. That's specifically for SimConnect. And the WASM, they fixed a crash when using WASM network API when a URI that has no path component. So, these are all the fixes. So, if you, add these fixes onto the first two builds of this sim update, then this sim update will likely be the biggest sim update ever being released in the history of Flight Simulator 2020. So I hope that they will add some more stuff, or maybe this is it, because we still have a few more weeks to go, right, before it's official. But this is really, massive, right? So in this video, we looked at the release notes, right? It was a pretty long video where we went to all the, updates. I hope you liked it. If you liked it, then consider to use the like button. If you got questions or comments, then feel free to post in the comment box below. And if you want to stay up to date about new videos I'm posting, then make sure that you're subscribing to my channel. Thanks for watching and see you next time.